That's in your contract that you need to abide by. What the?
Well, I don't know what you want from me.
It's in your contract because you want to get paid whatever you want to make, and then you don't abide by your contract. So this, we're the phone.
Owning an Orange County Choppers custom bike might not be the dream investment fans think it is. For years, Paul Tutul Sr. built a reputation as a larger-than-life force in the custom motorcycle world, turning bold designs into television gold on American Chopper. But lately, whispers of declining craftsmanship and inflated prices have begun to surface. Are these legendary bikes losing their edge, or is this backlash fueled by critics chasing attention? Join us as we discuss some wild reactions against buying an Orange County Chopper. Paul Tutul's reputation. Before anyone ever twists and turns in ignition to get welcomed by that bellowing roar on the motorcycle, first, they buy into a name, Paul Tutul. Paul became a pariah of one of America's biggest cultures in the early 2000s, custom bikes. Biker gangs and regular motorcycle enthusiasts have been a part of the American popular subculture since time immemorial, but not many brought the culture to bear as Paul did. Paul grew into the loud world of American V-twin engines, clustered between the thick metal frames and clamped into shape. He built a reputation for himself and his workers, who created every motorbike egghead's wet dream every time they were in the shop. But Paul wasn't just some geek who happened on engines by mistake. In fact, he owned a company called OC Ironworks, where he dealt in steel. It was the Orange County sensation in the early 90s. However, that was not enough for an overachiever like Paul Tutul. He wanted something else, something different, that screamed America from the top of the Empire State Building, and everyone could hear it. So, he decided to create a company, Orange County Choppers, where he put his knowledge of steel and engines to good use. The company entered the biker culture when it least expected it, remodeling motorcycles into monsters and curating engines and new bodywork that immediately changed the biker culture in Orange County, New York, and by extension, all of the United States. Paul galvanized his reputation bit by bit, steelwork after steelwork, and welded his name into the American biker culture, slowly building his legacy. While he had become some sort of local hero in Orange County and other parts of New York, with the roars of his custom motorcycles bringing the noise as usual, he suddenly fell on the radar of a huge company, a powerhouse in media and film, the Discovery Channel. Slowly but surely, the Orange County local hero had finally found a home on live television. Although news of his expertise on steel and motorbike engines had traveled wide and far, his personality was the biggest unknown. But the Discovery Channel's decision to bring him on board with a franchise of his own, where he could be super expressive even with the cameras rolling, set him up for exposure to the real world. On television, Paul was creating the dream motorcycles. But what price did bike enthusiasts have to pay for ownership of their dream beasts? Price to pay for the dream. The NADA book, now known as the J.D. Power Motorcycle Guide, listed just over 10 companies that made bikes, including flagships like Honda, Yamaha, Suzuki, Harley-Davidson, BMW, and Triumph. However, the late 90s and the early 2000s saw a serious surge in custom bike designs, ushering in the age of the choppers. Owing to the chopper craze, the number of production companies surged to well over 200. It did not take long for these new designs to saturate the bike scene and create a new following. However, Paul Sr. and the Discovery Channel got the show on the road in March 2003, creating memories that live on in the United States biker communities. While America watched Paul build these custom chopper-style bikes, they came at a price that few could afford. The bikes were not particularly built for folks on a budget, as prices were determined by how much remodeling was done to the motorcycles, the paint jobs, and how they looked each time the cameras captured them in a showroom. Although these wildly remodeled machines look the part in a showroom and are worth having for most high-end owners as a collectible, some regular American folks have quickly figured out that the resale value of these wild beasts is mostly dependent on current market conditions. For context, other high-end motorcycle brands, which are mass-produced by established manufacturers, have stable sales and resale value because potential buyers know exactly what they might be getting. But what exactly would a potential buyer expect from a motorcycle that had been heavily remodeled by a chopper company? Soon, curiosity spills into concern. The solid reputation that Paul Tutul Sr. had built around his name and his company had slowly started to split hairs. While some decided that their chopper-style remodelings should be considered clientele-based, narrowing prices down to the level of remodeling, others, especially regular folk, have often argued for a drop in prices. However, uniqueness and expression have always been Paul Tutul's standard, and he would not compromise for anyone, regardless of the split opinions on social media. While the price ranges had often sparked debate, Paul has a track record of creating legacy chopper designs, such as the Anti-Venom bike, the Cadillac, the Aragon Dragon bike, and the wheelchair-friendly Christopher Reeve bike. Speaking of the Christopher Reeve Special, the bike was created to honor a man who once graced the silver screen as Superman, but spent the rest of his life in a wheelchair after a spinal injury from an accident. According to Paul, you needed a ramp, you couldn't have a clutch, you had to have a handbrake. But the result is that someone who is a paraplegic could get on that bike by themselves. And that was exactly the dream: to give Christopher Reeve some more time to feel the open wind in his face, unassisted, while riding a bike. But what price would the Christopher Reeve of this world be paying for such comfort and design? While the exact price was not revealed to the world for reasons best known to the Reeve family and Dana, bike enthusiasts and tabloid owners painted a picture close to an eye-watering sum of $30,000 to $50,000, not exactly what regular folks could afford. But while the princes sow doubt in the minds of regular folks about getting a custom-sized American bike, others have different reasons to avoid buying them. But that's where the dream starts to wobble, because asphalts don't care about aesthetics. Showmanship and trade-offs. Obviously, bikes are responsible for their abilities to commute a rider, but sometimes some of the designs on American Chopper at its peak somewhat suggested possibilities that these bikes mostly fit in the empty garages with LED lights placed on them for just how sleek and beautiful they are, rather than being ridden on a major road. When the American Chopper reached its peak in the early 2000s, they had bike designs that generated serious buzz. In 2004, Will Smith, for the premiere of his movie, I, Robot, commissioned a custom chopper, and the designs resonated loudly with the times. But here's the twist. While frames and lenses can come together easily to capture some of the greatest pictures of these aesthetically pleasing choppers sitting on a concrete floor, asphalt is a completely different ballgame. The designs left many wondering how a motorcycle with a long fork, aggressive rake angles, wide rear tires, and oversized front tires was supposed to work on asphalt as gracefully as the standard bikes. While standard bikes mass-produce their designs based on engineering optimization, showmanship and aesthetics are important parts of creating American choppers. As the name suggests, the chopper bikes are made from parts of the original engineering designs, with some components chopped off to give a bit more aesthetic appeal. However, it has an important trade-off in its on-road performance. Although Paul Tutul and the American Choppers had proven over the years that the bikes are absolutely road-friendly and just as good on the road as they are easy on the eyes. But how distinct are these trade-offs in real road performances? Although the choppers are absolutely rideable, as seen in their day-to-day use in the United States, the long forks, which create a show-stopping appearance and make a statement, reportedly make them less comfortable to maneuver than a regular motorbike. But it does not end there. Naturally, regular motorbikes are designed with suspension systems and ergonomic design in mind. For context, these motorbikes are designed with the seat, handlebars, and foot pegs to fit the rider's body and posture and to be usable on a day-to-day basis before they are tested on the road and mass-produced for the commercial market. However, the Orange County Choppers are a completely different beast on the ergonomics front. The seats are designed much lower than those on regular motorcycles, with nearly no regard for day-to-day riding. The handlebars on the Choppers are designed to extend farther, straining the shoulders, in contrast with regular motorbikes, and, paired with a low seat, create a nuanced problem that becomes a topic on social media. Whether it's really worth blowing up a regular budget on these beastly Choppers. But, as times changed, the need for performance-oriented bikes took over the motorcycle market, with more people seemingly choosing safety over aesthetics. But this shift in the American biker palette would hit the custom Choppers harder than anyone expected. The death and resurgence of the chopper craze. Pop culture has continuously evolved across industries such as music, television, Hollywood, and even biker culture. In the mid-2000s, the United States lost its craze for choppers, and more commercial and sport-friendly bikes took over the scene. Soon, the silhouette of these long-forked beasts and ergonomic anomalies grew distant, as new sport-friendly motorbike inventions came to the fore. Suspension technologies, balance, ergonomics, and rider fit suddenly returned to the biker space as important concepts that overshadowed long fork aesthetics. However, this new reflection that crept in the mid-2000s was not enough to throw the Orange County Chopper out of business. The concept of trend is cyclical after all. It swings back and forth like a pendulum, and the Chopper's importance came swinging right back in the 2010s when they created some of their best works, one of which was said to command at least $140,000. While the prices, in contrast with the performance trade-offs, remain a huge talking point when the discourse about never buying a chopper is raised in the media, how does anyone fault a company for supplying such expensive remakes when they keep getting clients who commission these designs? But the real question remains: how did a motorcycle style suddenly lose traction in the late 2000s? As most critics had predicted, economic and financial failures, especially the Great Recession of 2008, reportedly forced these custom choppers into a hold, as previous owners either needed to make a sale to get back on their feet, and companies like Big Dog and American Iron Horse stopped production completely, unable to keep their heads above the water. Although some critics banked on these financial and economic failures as the perfect "never buy an Orange County Chopper" message, the 2010s saw a disturbing resurgence in the need for these custom bad boys. With new designs on the horizon and a company like Big Bear, which had once been a victim of economic failure, back in the fold, possible economic failures were seen as a regular ditch any business franchise could fall into, hence the continuous creation of these beastly monsters. However, this epileptic client base made it harder to reach the peak that the custom choppers once reached in the early 2000s. But it gets even deeper when the most popular franchise about choppers suddenly took a hit and knocked the wind out of its sails. And when the biggest chopper show in America lost its spark, the ripple effects could not be ignored. The end of a franchise. The Two-Tool family, in conjunction with the Discovery Channel, introduced America to the roars of motorcycles on live television, showcasing how custom bikes are created and how they flex their prowess to challenge regular motorcycles. From the very inception of the show, it immediately created a buzz around custom choppers and brought the late 90s craze to early 2000 television. It was skill, nostalgia, and bravado all warped into one explosive show. The show created so much buzz that some parts of its episodes were made into memes. One of its most popular forms in digital culture is the argument meme, which captures images of an argument between Paul Tutul Sr. and his son, Paul Tutul Jr. Although both men had welded their names into American pop culture as a unit, it wasn't long before their contrasting works and creative differences became a problem. Naturally, the show had built its hallmarks around the father-son relationship, so America does not only see steel plates, shifted gears, weird ergonomics, and sparks flying from the welding. The show was a display of real wit, cunning, and intelligence from both father and son, who often devise different waveform, customize a chopper. These creative differences imbued the show with a natural uniqueness until 2008, when father and son decided to go their separate ways as they could no longer see eye to eye on important matters. The pair were reportedly arguing about the design of the anti-VMOM bike, deciding what the handlebars should look like, and other aspects of the bike's immediate design. This fight for creative control created a mess between both parties and led to a separation in 2008. Although the fight was enough to split the fan base, with some following Paul Jr. and his new franchise and others sticking with his father, especially because of his pioneer status, the Discovery Channel continued the show without a doubt. As expected, it triggered silent alarm bells, prompting media discussions that sparked some controversy. Why would the Discovery Channel, which had benefited from the father-son dynamic, continue the show even when they broke up? Could it have possibly been staged? However, Paul Jr.'s confession in 2019, discussing how strained their relationship had become and how they did not speak for 10 years, was enough to clear the air about the true nature of their conflict. But for many who doubted their intent and roused a rabble on social media, Paul Sr.'s decision to sue his son over creative license, especially after starting his own company, was enough to reveal how badly their situation had deteriorated. However, America had to bear the brunt. 2 years after the explosive fight, Discovery Channel canceled the franchise, taking the choppers off the air. But as the family went their separate ways, it strained their legacies and set the stage for what was to come: a father, a son, and the dying embers of chopper culture. Having served the American public the best that television had to offer on choppers with the Discovery Channel, Paul Jr. built his own company, where he also built custom bikes. Another Tutul, creating a company that produces custom choppers, was exactly what the culture needed, driving up some competition in the chopper market and causing a serious spike in new designs. As a new competitor, he came with a bang, naming his company Paul Jr. Designs, where he could exert complete creative control over designs and craft. Although he had finally gotten his wish as a creative force behind his own designs, he left a broken relationship with his father in its wake. But will he ever find the road to reparations? In 2010, TLC, a sister company of the Discovery Channel, decided to take a risk on uniting father and son and remixing the same old dynamic that made America tick. Hence, they created American Chopper, Senior versus Junior. On this show, America had two of its finest back on her screen, building the future of American chopper bikes together. This concerted effort to create a new franchise was so puzzling that some Americans could not believe it. As expected, the father-son dynamic the show created was an important part of their project, helping bridge the communication between both parties. However, weeks turn into years, and years turn into another cancellation of the show. Although the show literally ended during the fourth season preview on September 3, 2012, November 16 of the same year was enough to cancel the show. Although it was a big blow to the franchise, especially those who had some serious hype in the show's resurgence, the show was the perfect time and process that the Tutul family needed together to repair some bridges and figure out a way to tolerate each other's ingenuity without one ceding control of his honest opinions. But will the Tootles family effort be enough to save the dying embers of Orange County Choppers from its critics? While the value of a bike or a car could drastically deteriorate over the years, watching a $160,000 American chopper suddenly command a mere $15,000 price, including the trailer, pad, and mystery box that it came in, was a big blow for the chopper community. Unfortunately, it gets even worse as the new buyer makes a conscious effort to build a convincing case against ever owning a chopper, describing it as a giant money pit. Whether that was enough to convince the generation to completely forget about owning a chopper, or piqued their interest to see for themselves what these choppers can do, only time will tell. With prices and engineering trade-offs, showmanship, and family drama on the table, is an Orange County chopper a great investment or just another flashy money pit? Do you think Tootles could ever find common ground again? Share your thoughts with us in the comments section. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the next video showing on your screen. You will enjoy it.